You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm Dustin and Tony is with me and we are here to cover all the content news from February 7th through February 20th. We have 2 weeks worth of time to cover because we didn't have an episode last week. We do have a bunch of news, and this is going to be a big change. After this episode, we're going to be going through a big change with the Streaming Wars that we'll discuss a little bit later. But part of a new format that we're going to be doing is going to be very evident based off of the news that we're going to be covering here, because there's a lot of news that released over the past couple weeks, but not a lot to actually discuss. So let's jump into Netflix and discuss what happened there. First up, Michael McIntyre has landed a stand-up special at Netflix. Alexander Wu has inked an overall deal with Netflix. Netflix has picked up a Nipsey Hussle documentary directed by Ava DuVernay. Paw Patrol creators' next project, Mighty Express, is coming to Netflix. Love Anarchy signals Netflix's desire for more Nordic originals. Netflix has picked up 6 short films from the Saudi Arabian production house. Netflix picks up Naomi Osaka docuseries. The U.S. rights to Thomas and Friends have been picked up at Netflix. Netflix has picked up the Italian drama Lie Ahead. Netflix has ordered the limited series Painkiller, which focuses on the opioid crisis. Netflix has landed the Meteor film Don't Look Up from Adam McKay, and Tom Segura is going to create 2 more comedy specials for Netflix, one in English and one in Spanish. So, out of all of this news, what are the things that stood out to you?
The things that stood out to me was that, I think the first one would be that Ava DuVernay documentary that she's filming about Nipsey Hussle. If you read the article and look at the price point, it was 8 figures for the documentary, and this is the second time that a documentary's price has kind of struck me. I know we talked about it. The listeners are going to correct us, but it was about a few weeks ago. A few episodes ago, we talked about some documentary being some astronomical price, and I can never see, I guess, in my book, I can never understand just the price points of some of these documentaries and just how, with, you have more of a content wars now than a streaming wars, but with all new players into the market, this content's going to get even more hotter. It's just the way that the economics are working. It's just, to me, it's like these prices are just going higher and higher and higher, and 8 figures is just a little bit ridiculous. Ava DuVernay is great. Her documentaries, I love them, but man, 8 figures, just for a documentary, that's a lot. And another thing that kind of struck me was about how, Ava DuVernay, you got Alexander Wu, Adam McKay. It's interesting to see how you had these creators at first sign these exclusive overall deals, right? That they only stay at one place and they make films for them. But now it's interesting to see, multiple times we're talking about these creators signing multiple deals for this company. Like Ava DuVernay is in, I think, 3 or 4 different, places filming, different content for these producers. And so Adam McKay is definitely in 2, because we talked about him about 2 weeks ago. And so, this is great for, the creators. I think we talked about the streaming wars and who are the sure winners. I think it's definitely going to be the creators, because there's more opportunities for them to deliver the content either through linear TV or through some type of platform, HBO Max or, maybe Hulu, Disney Plus, places like that. It seems like, content, it's a good time to be a content creator, because, you have all these different places that mean content. And if you're good at your job, you're going to be able to deliver. So that to me is kind of what I'm getting from this Netflix news, because otherwise not that interesting to me.
Yeah. And then the only thing that I saw that was kind of interesting was just that they're continually expanding the international stuff with the Nordic stuff. And Italy, they said that they picked up projects from both the Nordic area and also from Italy, and then
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia, yeah. And then there was also the expansion of some more kids projects. So they continually expand their focus. Like, for the longest time, we've had original series that are comedy or dramas. Then they got into films. Then they got into doing a lot more other content. Now they're doing a lot more international. There's a lot of anime. Now, even, just recently they released their like a trailer of sorts for the content that's coming in March to the service. And when you watch the trailer, they break it up by here's dramas, here's comedies, and they don't even differentiate between the films and the series anymore. It's just based off of the genre. But then they also still have a section for, family/kids content. They have a section for anime, which is huge for the service because there's not a lot of providers out there that have anime available. So the fact that they every single month have at least a couple of shows that release, or even if they're not originals, they have a couple of new shows that they're actually just get the rights to put on their service that's anime. That's a big deal because obviously there's a market for it. So it just shows that, while the other services like HBO Max and Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, while they're, just getting off the ground, and obviously Netflix has a huge advantage with time, Netflix has realized that they need a wide variety of content to really, stand out from, stand above, not stand out necessarily because they're already standing out, but stand above everybody else who's coming up, because it's going to take some time before Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus or HBO Max can start producing some of the not as demanded content like anime or like more family projects and things like that. While that content is sought after by an audience, people are going to go to Netflix for that, and it's something that's difficult to compete with by having your own content for that. So that's what I like seeing from Netflix, is that every single week we continue to talk about how they're just expanding their international reach, they're expanding the type of content that they have. So that's good to see. All right, so jumping over to Prime Video, we've got just a couple of things. Upload, which is from The Office creator Greg Daniels, is moving forward at Prime Video. Then there's a mini-series called Boundless that is also set for Prime Video. Both of these news pieces, there's not a whole lot here. The Upload was actually announced back last September. This was before we started the show. And it's got an interesting premise. The idea is that it's set in the future. This is the one that stood out to me, is that it's set in the future where there's a person who gets into an accident, and there's the ability in the future to have your conscience basically uploaded to the cloud, where you would spend the rest of your life, well, not the rest of your life, but the rest of existence, basically in this virtual world. So this person gets into an accident, prematurely gets uploaded to this, new existence within the cloud, and basically has to navigate how, what to do with the rest of their life. So it's kind of an interesting premise. The fact that it comes from Greg Daniels, who's best known for The Office, makes me kind of interested in seeing where this goes.
Yeah, it took me a few rereads to really understand what was going on, but it does seem interesting. It's definitely, kind of like a Black Mirror. Like if Black Mirror were to make itself like a true comedy, this is kind of what I would see it would be. It was a little bit hard to read at first, the description. You're gonna die and then go up to the cloud, but you would actually be somebody else's property. Like it just, I feel like the description didn't do the best job of it, but it does seem interesting, and anything Greg Daniels does, pretty sold on, so I'm looking forward to it.
All right, and then over at Apple TV Plus, Apple has acquired a new drama film called Swan Song that'll be coming to the service later this year. Disney Plus has announced that Turner and Hooch series is moving forward with Josh Peck to headline the series. Disney is also supposedly developing a Tom Sawyer film, and as well as a Cinderella retelling called Sneakerella. And then the Mighty Ducks series is also moving forward, with Lauren Graham starring and Emilio Estevez returning to his previous role from the trilogy of movies from the 90s. So nothing super stood out here. The Mighty Ducks and the Turner and Hooch things, those were rumored a while back. These are actually moving forward though, and this is going to be happening. So it'll be interesting to see what other projects that Disney pulls out of the 90s, their 90s library, to kind of redo or, do a retelling or a reboot or a sequel or, things like that, because it seems like that's Disney's method at this point, with a lot of their live action films outside of like the Marvel stuff, which to a degree is still sequels. A lot of the movies that aren't based off of the IPs that they have they've come to buy in the last 15 years. A lot of the content that Disney's producing is either live action remakes of their animated movies, sequels to movies, reimaginings of different movies. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the what we see from Disney Plus outside of the Marvel and the Star Wars and the Pixar stuff that we know is coming to the service.
See, I agree with you, and I kind of hope you're wrong, just because I don't know. For me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of retellings. I already thought that they've made 3 or 4 different types of quote-unquote retellings of Cinderella before. That doesn't seem interesting to me. I guess I don't mind them building off their property, but just don't rehash stories they've already done and that you've kind of done multiple times. Or the whole idea of Cinderella, it's a, that you could take that, the story plots and build it into something else. It's just, to me, that's not interesting. But once again, if it works, then don't change. Kind of hope you're wrong on that, but yeah. I think you're going to be right. So,
all right. So jumping over to HBO Max, the Friends reunion special is expected to happen as the deal's near. Now, word is that the Friends reunion is not going to be with the actors replaying their characters, like showing like an update or a special where it's like a film of what happens in the future, like we see with other sitcoms. Most likely what's going to happen is just the 6 core cast members getting back together, contemplating about it, kind of like a behind the scenes documentary type thing of what their thoughts are of the series as a whole and its lasting impact. That seems to be what the direction that they're going for.
It seems that they're just going to really piss off a bunch of fans if they do that.
I think they're going to piss off a bunch of fans no matter what they do. And the one thing that I have to say is if the amount of money that's being currently tossed around is that each cast member could be getting upwards of like $5 million to appear for this special. That's $30 million outside of any production costs just to get the 6 actors to return to discuss the thing. Like if they're not even playing their characters and it's just the actors discussing it, why in the world would they need to be paying them so much money? I don't understand that. But I mean, we'll see. HBO hasn't officially announced that it's happening. There's every inclination that it will happen based off of the rumors out there. But I'm sure they're going to wait until we get closer to May because most likely what will happen is when HBO Max launches, we know Friends will be on the service. I'm sure one of the things they would love to launch HBO Max with is this reunion special, whatever it may be, to bring the Friends fans who are missing the series from being on Netflix directly over to HBO Max. I'm sure that's what they would hope for. So I'm sure we'll be hearing things about this in the coming months because if they do end up doing something, it's going to happen before May because I'm positive this would be a project that if it happens, it's going to happen when the service launches. All right, so some of the other stuff from HBO Max, family podcast series The Two Princes has been aimed for an animated special at HBO Max. More Happy Than Not is being adapted. A business competition series from Mark Burnett is going to be hosted by Bethany Frankel, and that has landed a series order. The Gordita Chronicles is currently in development, and Minx has gotten a pilot order, which is a project that Paul Feig is attached to. Jumping over to some other services, there's just a couple of quick things. First up, Quibi. Quibi has greenlit a Demi Lovato talk show, and then they have added a series that will feature a celebrity mentalist. Over at Hulu, they're developing a thriller drama series called The Holdout. And then finally, the thing that I think is the one that we need to talk about is IMDB TV has inked a deal for certain Disney and Fox titles. Now, I don't think a lot of people know what IMDB TV is. I certainly didn't know what it was before this story popped up. I had heard of it, but didn't really understand what it was. So if you're unfamiliar with what it is, IMDB is a website which most people use to view credits of actors and people involved in a variety of different productions and things like that. Amazon had bought the website years ago, and one of the things that they've done more recently is they've started a free streaming service that is branded with the IMDb name. It's called IMDB TV, and basically it's very similar to like Zumo or Tubi or Pluto TV, where there's content available to watch, and it's completely free because it's ad supported. So this new project is essentially a lot of ABC shows and a lot of Fox shows are now licensed to IMDb TV, where they'll be able to have those projects on their service. Now, that's not an exclusive thing because with a lot of these ad-supported services where there's no subscription involved, they make their money off of the ads, so a lot of the license deals they have are not exclusive. So while there's ABC shows that will appear on IMDb TV, that's not to say you won't be able to find them elsewhere, like Hulu, which makes most sense with Fox and Disney projects being on Hulu because that's where Disney's eggs are at in their basket. So the idea is that, we're going to see other content popping up. There's been word, well, just recently, this is not necessarily to do with IMDb TV, but just the free ad-supported. The first episode of Picard was made available over on Pluto TV so that people could watch it for free just to get people interested in going over and actually subscribing to CBS All Access. So it shows the ability to have content on these free services and how it can enhance the bigger services that these companies own. For Amazon, they have IMDb TV, which is their free service. Their main service is Prime Video, which they say is not a normal competitor to Netflix and things like that. But then you have like Pluto TV, which is basically the free service to CBS All Access because they're part of the same parent company. Peacock will have theirs all integrated into the same service. So it's something that we're going to probably start seeing a lot more. And that's one of the reasons we've been covering a lot of these other smaller streaming services and not just the big ones, is because a lot of these smaller ones are coming into play when it comes into the larger picture of things.
Yeah, I had no clue that there was an IMDB TV service, but I mean, I think with the name, IMDB, that's going to give it a lot of credence. Should it or should it not? It's a different question. But hearing just seeing IMDB TV, I'm like, oh, okay, like obviously they do something with video. It's have some relation to the IMDB service and proper, so that's going to be good. I think that this is just now hearing about this and what this entails for Amazon. I think this is a good way to funnel viewers, users to Amazon Prime Video. Okay, you go on IMDb, you're gonna look up a certain actor. Okay, then you might get recommended that hey, you can watch their service, their series or whatever on IMDb TV, and that's great. Then if you don't want commercials, go to Prime Video. I think that's kind of a great mechanism. I think having that pipeline is good, and we're kind of seeing that pipeline being developed for Peacock and other places as well, where you have the ad supported, and you have to get started somewhere. And so this is a great way for Amazon to kind of funnel viewership to its Prime Video service. But it is interesting though how because we talked off the air about how a lot of these deals to license the ABC library, TV library, aren't necessarily exclusive, and that a lot of this content's also found on Hulu's package because it's in part of their library. I think we're going to start seeing even more studios license out their content to like IMDb TV, maybe like a Tubi, some other place, and to stream. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go check out IMDb TV, especially since they have this new content out, because it's actually content I'm gonna check. I checked out, I downloaded the Tubi app. I was checking it out, and it's like I get it. I like the app, but I am not necessarily the biggest fan of what titles they have. But so since they've got this Disney library now, and not to mention whatever else that they have, that I'm gonna probably check out this IMDb TV service out and see what they got.
All right, and that is all the news we actually have from the past 2 weeks. There was a bunch, but like I said, there wasn't a lot to discuss. So one of the things we wanted to actually discuss before we wrap up the episode is, I can't remember for sure if we discussed this or not, but one of the things that I know for a fact that we talked about back before the end of the year, the episode, I think the last episode we released of 2019, was we talked about some of the projects that we really enjoyed in 2019, even some that didn't actually release in 2019, but projects that we really enjoyed. And I think we briefly talked about some of the projects that we were potentially anticipating, but I wanted to go back to that because it's been a couple months. We have some more projects that have been announced that we know are coming, and I want to go back to some of the things that we're looking forward to. So specifically, is there any show or projects that you've heard about in the last couple months, or that is coming in the sometime in 2020 that you are really interested in checking out?
I am a huge geek, and so I love everything comic books. I mean, that, the listeners probably know that, and so I'm excited for the Disney slate of the Winter Soldier and the Falcon and Winter Soldier of the WandaVision series. I mean, you got the Mandalorian show up. I mean, I've been able to watch a lot more stuff on my free time recently, so I've been liking the content that's been out there. But what I'm most excited about is just kind of this just the nerddom, just being able to watch these shows that are connected to part of this greater expansive MCU universe, but able to watch it in a television form. I'm excited about that. I mean, I was a big fan of the Netflix TV shows because you were able to deliver great stories about the superheroes and just be able to tell a much richer story. I'm excited about, and once again, there's just so much uncertainty with HBO Max, but I do like a lot of their lineup that's coming out and the shows that have been hinted and talked about, and I'm excited for the potential of HBO Max. So I think to me, it's from a concrete perspective, I definitely like kind of what Disney's offering, especially for 2020. But I think the most uncertainty of what I will like will be HBO Max. And I have no clue how that's going to roll out. Either it's going to be great, it's going to be bad, it's going to be something. But I'm very interested in HBO Max. Just from their library and what they've talked about, it does seem very cool. So those are kind of my two extremes. Is the Disney stuff is definitely the stuff I'm interested in, but then kind of the speculatory part is definitely HBO Max and all that stuff. What's going to happen? What about you? What are you excited about in 2020?
Obviously, I'm interested in a lot of the same things that you talked about, a lot of the comic book and geek stuff, Star Wars projects, Marvel projects. There's DC projects that may or may not be coming in 2020 based off of how they roll out on HBO Max. So that stuff is great. But one of the other things I'm super excited about is the return of a lot of the shows that I have grown to really appreciate over the years. So just next month in March, we've got Ozark Season 3. And if you haven't checked out Ozark, I strongly suggest, if you enjoy thriller, crime drama, any of that kind of stuff, suspense, check out that show. It's really, really good. But the third season's coming out, and it's real easy to watch the first couple seasons because I think they're only about 8 episodes a piece, so it's not like they're super long. You can get through them in a very short amount of time before the third season comes out. I think it's the end of March that it's releasing. I'm interested in seeing that. Altered Carbon is coming out just less than a couple weeks because it's coming out at the end of February, so that's returning. I saw the first season last year. There's another one that's coming out later in the year, the sequel, which it's not necessarily a sequel, but the second season of The Haunting of Hill House, which probably will not even be called that, is coming, and that was a really enjoyable show too. So there's a lot of shows that are coming out. I still definitely, I've talked about this a couple episodes ago, I want to check out Narcos Mexico because I haven't seen that. There's a lot of different shows that I feel like the second or third wave of really good original content from Netflix is, a lot of them are getting the new seasons, and I'm really excited about it. I mean, one that I'm unfortunate not to be seeing this year is Mindhunter, because that's another one of my favorite shows on Netflix. But the other main thing is, just like you said, HBO Max. It's really that uncertainty at this point because, we've talked about how Quibi has an uphill battle when it comes to what they're producing and how they're going to be doing it and how it's going to actually be able to compete with some of these other services. And part of what we talked about when they did their keynote back at CES was, well, do they have the ability to have more content, or are they going to be able to focus on the content? And as predicted, we've seen some trailers over the past couple of weeks from Quibi showcasing some of that content that they're actually going to be releasing. So I'm expecting that very soon here from HBO Max, specifically because Quibi's releasing at the beginning of April, and while HBO Max said May of 2020, that could be early May, it could be late May. Most likely it'll be late May. If it is late May, that means that hypothetically we could be seeing trailers for some of the projects very, very soon here, like within the next month, because we're not that far out. So I'm expecting a lot more details about HBO Max. We know it's going to be a weekly schedule that they're going to be releasing, but the question is, how much content are we actually going to be seeing? We know that there's a ton of original series that they're creating in combination with the HBO series that are continuously coming out right now on HBO. There's a lot of content that they've announced that they're working on. There's a lot of content that has been confirmed that it's coming. The question is, how soon are we actually going to be seeing some of these things? Because what we haven't seen is the release timeframes for any of these things. Quibi has a lot of stuff, but they've got to have a lot of stuff right out the gate. HBO Max has a library of content, so they have the ability to kind of space some of their original content out. But they've announced so much original content in comparison to a service like Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus that you almost expect them to be showcasing how frequently these different shows are going to be coming out. So I'm hoping to see some details here very soon. But I'm really pumped about HBO Max because HBO Max, is because it's part of Warner Media. It features a lot of my favorite franchises when it comes to film and television, things like that. So I'm really excited to see what the service can do, and I really have high hopes for it. So it's more of like I want to get to the point where it's out, and I want to see what it is, I want to experience it and enjoy it, because I think my anticipation level has already peaked, and I want to just get to, being able to use it at this point. All right, so with that being said, as far as trailers, I'm not going to go through every single one of them because there was over 25 trailers that released over the past 2 weeks. So if you're looking for the list of trailers that have released, check out the show notes. There's a list of all of them, including some that have already released because of the fact that this is 2 weeks worth of trailers. Some of these shows have already released, some of these shows are right around the corner, and some of them are coming out in the next couple months. With that being said, I want to kind of talk about the new direction of the streaming wars in the coming weeks. So
we're shutting down.
Yeah. We're closing shop, and that's it. So enjoy. We'll see you guys maybe later. No, for real. One of the things that we kind of have struggled with when it comes to covering everything with the streaming wars is that, initially we talked about just doing service news. We realized that there wasn't enough service news to continuously have an episode week to week. So we started covering content news. And one of the things we've struggled with content news is, while there is
there's so much content news.
Yes, exactly. There's a decent trickle of content news throughout the week, every single week. The problem is that most of the content news that gets released is more of like here's a title of a show, it's coming to this service, or this show got a pilot order, or this show's got a series order, or this show's in development. There's not a lot to actually talk about when it comes to that content news. So the issue is, how do you have this medium of still talking about the streaming services even when there's not a ton of service news, and how do you get through the idea of covering content when there's not that much to actually discuss when it comes to the amount of content that, the amount of information that's given with the content news that releases. Obviously, we've been doing 2 episodes a week for quite some time. Last week was the first week we've actually taken off since we started. We even had extra episodes releasing during the holidays when we had time, when we took time off. But one of the things we've been trying to figure out is how do we balance everything, and how do we make the show more enjoyable for you guys, the listeners? We want to get more feedback from the listeners. So we were, figuring out ways of how to make this better. And basically what we've decided is we're going to move the show from twice a week to once a week. We're going to try to release the episodes in the middle of the week, aiming for a Wednesday release in most cases. But basically the idea is that we're going to be covering all of the services that we have been from the very beginning, and obviously some of the smaller services as well. But one of the things that we're going to be doing probably a little bit less is we're still showcasing the news and doing a rundown of the headlines and things like that. But one of the things that we're going to kind of shift towards is, instead of having to figure out things to discuss when it comes to those headlines, discussing things that we want to discuss about the headlines, but purposely having a discussion point on every single episode. So what we're going to be doing is, starting next week, the content news and the service news will come together into one episode. We'll be doing a rundown of all of the news related to each service. So there'll still be a Netflix section where we talk about everything Netflix. There'll be a section for Disney Plus and HBO Max. And then obviously some weeks there won't be anything to talk about for some of the services. But the idea is we'll still be focusing on each and every service that you've come to expect from us. But then also we will be making sure that we have a larger discussion point for every single episode. So if you listen to the episode earlier in the week, we talked about Warner Max, and that was like a 10-minute long discussion. And if you listen to the last episode, you also heard our discussion point for next week is actually going to be the Viacom CBS streaming service. So our goal is going to be to do a little bit more research about our discussion points ahead of time, have more time to actually discuss these things, because we focus less on the headlines that there's not a lot to discuss. But we have these main discussion points that really Tony and I can go back and forth and actually discuss these things and go in depth on certain topics and things like that. And sometimes obviously the discussion points will be based off of things that are happening right then and there, and the news or a service launching or something like that. And sometimes it could be something, that could literally, we could talk about any time, like the content that's coming out and what we're excited about for the month. It'll just depend on the flow of news, because that's the way we want to be able to be fluid as far as what we actually discuss and things like that. So we're hoping you guys obviously stick with us. We hope that you enjoy what we have been doing, and we hope that you will enjoy what we will be doing starting next week. But the idea is, if we go to a one week per episode, our runtime will probably extend, so we'll be a little bit longer of a show, but we'll only have one episode per week. But the idea is that it's very fluid in the sense of there's not a set runtime. We're going to try to get the episode out in the middle of every single week, so you can listen to it during the work week or before the weekend comes, so that you have an update of all of the news. But that's what's happening. I mean, the streaming wars is ever changing, and as the podcast called The Streaming Wars, we have to ever change too. So hopefully we get some good feedback about the changes that are coming, and once we start the new format, you guys are enjoying it, we can get some feedback. But we're always looking for feedback. You can get in touch with us on our Discord or through Twitter, and you can also follow us on those services to also check out all the articles that we talk about here on the podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram and interact with us on there. You can send us an email at thestreamingwars@gmail.com. You can leave us reviews wherever you're listening to the podcast. It's always greatly appreciated, or just feedback in general wherever you're listening to the podcast. And with that being said, we hope that you guys are enjoying what we're doing. And like I said, we hope that you enjoy what we will be doing starting next week. So for Tony and myself, this has been the Streaming Wars, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.